Yeah, they're fully carpeted motorbikes. Pretty cool, huh? So Karahan Tepe, again, remember this is 500 years older at least than Göbekli Tepe. It's on the side of a hill, but it's also probably that, what do they say, like 10 times larger than, or 4 or 5 times larger than Göbekli Tepe. And it's actually really interesting in the way that there's a lot of bedrock work, a bit different to Göbekli Tepe in its nature. This sort of stuff, where they're carving these. This almost looks like a hotep to me, like an Egyptian hotep, just about. And then obviously you have these cut channels all over the place. But I don't know what was going on here, man. Some really interesting bedrock work, and then you have these giant T-pillars. And this is the room with the face. It's the face sticking up, and they say a lot of this is phallic. So it might be a fertility thing, like this is all a bunch of dicks poking up out of the floor. I don't know. But it's all bedrock. Apart from this one, maybe doesn't look like it's bedrock, but these are all bedrock poking up. And then we'll wait till we see it. So I love this sort of stuff. So what you can see, note the discoloration on the stone, right? So you see this line, everything's like this grey above it and the dirt colour on the bottom. This is what's been poking up out of the ground for thousands of years. These, obviously, the grey colour, grey and black with the mould. You can see the original level of the dirt. These little tops are everywhere on this site. You can just walk around and see circles of T-pillars, just the tops of them, poking up out of the dirt. It's at least 500 years older than Göbekli Tepe. Probably, I'm sure it's older. This is the head here, and then there's a look at path you can crawl through here. There's alignments that have to do with this, like there's a passage that goes through here. Certain time of the year, the light shines through this and hits the face on the equinox or whatever. Andrew Collins figured it out. So this is what's interesting to me. See these sort of broken up rocks on the ground here? These were giant T-pillars, or pillars of some form. And look at the erosion on them. Like, these are busted up and broken up, and they've clearly fallen down. Just severely eroded, but these were original structures. And this is a giant, big bedrock cut platform. Cheers, man. Later. You see they're actively digging up this site. But again, you can see the line of the T-pillars too, like. The wildflowers are beautiful. This is just where they're digging out more. They just haven't dug down very far. There's probably big platforms like that. Like this is just the bottom of a T-pillar. We don't know how deep it is. Another one here. And so here's off to the side. This is off on just random side of the hill here. These are all T-pillars poking up. For sure. And look at I just love the colours of this too. Like, it was so beautiful up here. This is a broken T-pillar poking up out of the ground. This is another one. You can see the work surface on the side. This is a circle of them one. It's like 1, 2, 3... There's a couple of them here. There's another circle over here that goes this way. Whole other circle there. Crooker! Thank you so much for the 15 months, man. And all the support. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. You guys are great. So you can see like there's 2 circles of T-pillars just on this hill. It's a little hot tub here. So here's another, this is like a T-pillar with an arm. Although it has a few too many fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 10 fingers on that hand. 9, 8, 9, or 10, something like that. But same thing. It's almost like praying mantis arms, like goes this way, that way, this way, this way, that way, this way, and then same on the other side here. Too many fingers. They say this was a house. Again, you can see the top of this, what was exposed originally. So just imagine those other spots where you just see that little bit of grey rock on top. You've probably got something like this beneath it. That's Karahan. Circular stones, like these bathtubs, a whole bunch of these different type of round stones were here. This is a flattened out, this is a fallen massive T-pillar. Actually, no, this is, I think this is bedrock right here, but that's like a leopard. It's hard to see. It's like a stylized leopard with those dots. You see these leopards on the sides of things. That's just down there. You see these bedrock shapes here all had heads on them. They were anthropomorphic with heads, and the heads have all been taken to the museums. They were either broken off or they were already broken. But here's your big T-pillars that were laying down that are busted up and extremely eroded and just broken in all these multiple pieces. Here's another leopard. You see the head, the body, the tail. This is a leopard. So where you have foxes at Göbekli Tepe, leopards seem to have a deal over here. There's another leopard back here on with the dots. It's like a circuit, like a weird shaped stone as well. More pieces just laying out in the bush. Excuse me. Yeah, a lot more bedrock work here, which is hard to do.
Oh man.
Yeah, another leopard there. Maybe another one here. There's something carved on these originally. There's our head. Alright, let me skip forward to all these dots in the ground. That's the guy, that's Ramazan and the main man who's excavating the area. This is out in that field of T-pillars. So you want a George, like you see the T-pillar cut here. It's like just a T-pillar on its side. Then we found T-pillars all the way up to this, all through this field over here, like the tops of them, up to this donga that's up in the background over George's shoulder. There's some sheep out there too.
Remember everything, love.
Yeah, pretty clearly a T-pillar.
Crazy about you.
Modelled and scanned? I don't think so. I think what they're trying to do, what their plan is to try and scan it with ground-penetrating radar and acoustic techniques to try and map it out, and then only dig the sites where they see either the really big stuff or whatever. They're not going to dig it all up because it's humongous. Over the back side of this, again, more T-pillars poking up out of the place. This is the quarry. So this is a T-pillar that's in a quarry around the side of the hill. Sort of over over this side to the left of Dakota here is where the main excavation is. But this is probably 30 tons. This is a big piece of stone, and you can see how they were sort of shaping it and trying to get it down to this kind of natural crack in the bottom to get this thing out, but it's still stuck in the quarry. It would have been quite an effort to get this thing out and move it. He did. I ended up coming down here 3 times over the 3 weeks I was there. Okay. We came out here one day on the day off in between the tours, and then I just found tons of like worked flints everywhere, all over the place here. Hey, bro. $100. Damn. Thank you so much, man. You get back from your adventure too? I want to hear about your adventure at some point too. Thank you so much for $100, man. That was that's epic, dude. Thank you. And then we walked. You go up over the back hill here, and there's all these Neolithic caves. This is looking at the hill with Karahan. The excavations here on the left, and then the quarry's like over here, where that big quarried pillar is. And then on the other side of this and to the left of it, there's T-pillars everywhere. There's probably T-pillars all under this area here as well. This whole area is probably full of that stuff. It was freezing too. This day was freezing. I did fly around this the last act. There's no way I was flying my drone in this. This is an idea of the landscape, like the limestone hills that are everywhere. Yeah, I know. Sorry, bro. Snaky grass, but we got into like some caves. There's these Neolithic caves. Actually bigger than you think they are too.
It does, yeah.
Grazing land for them. There's certainly grazing out there. I mean, I think in the rest of a lot of the year it's probably very brown. Like it probably goes brown pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
Some of these are like two-room apartments down in here. Pretty cool.
Yeah, big cave.
Oh, caves back in there. You got to imagine like this, literally Neolithic in origins. It's like a foundation or a quarry or something. It was all cut out. It's really strange. These are the caves on the hill near Karahan. And then this is the quarry that we found on the map. And we went out here and looked at it. It's not modern. It may be Roman. But it's 100% like pretty old. Like there's a lot of quarrying work that's been done in here, just the way it's been built. And in fact, let's switch over to some drone stuff for this, because I know I have it. No, this is that Jethro place again. This is it here. So this is nothing on this map. There's nothing on the map to sort of talk about what this place is. It's definitely an ancient quarry, but it may just be a Roman quarry too. Like a limestone quarry. There's a lot of erosion in a lot of places. And there's actually, like, you see the cuts in some of the blocks. We did did take some pictures of it. I can change it. This is a better song. It's like my all-time favorite. And Göbekli Tepe is just up over here. In fact, I think that's it over there with the enclosure. You can see the enclosure there. Yeah, you can. So it's not far from Göbekli Tepe. And down in this forest here as well, there's actually a big T block in a T pillar in like in a quarry that nobody knows about, and that Ramazan had a photo of, and that was about the only thing. Don't even think the main archaeologist at the site knew about it. Ramazan and his buddy found it, and I think they've since fenced off that area, so they probably know about it now. But
He gets deep into this stuff, Joe.
I'm sure he does. His YouTube channel's incredible.
there's definitely a lot going on here. The stash. That's Colin Ross's dad. Which drone am I using? This is Mavic Mini. I just took the little mini one with me. I love this little drone, man. I'll probably get one of the new ones eventually because this is only 2.7K. I think the new minis do 4K. But it's 2.7 at 60, so. DJI Geolock in Turkey. I mean, I didn't have any problems with it. You can't fly everywhere. Like, Ramazan would call and tell everyone. Like, he'd have to call the authorities and say, we're going to fly some drones out here. We weren't supposed to go out here. Like, he was a little worried about us getting caught out at this site. This is, again, not an official site. Just, you can see where locals have come out and they've been digging, looking for stuff. But it's, yeah, I mean, this was a really interesting site. And we eventually brought, I think, a bunch of people here. Dude, yeah, that's the thing. You really get that sense. In this whole region, it must have been pretty densely populated. There are so many sites all over the place. And, you know, at Karahan, they found crocodile bones, leopard bones, bear bones. So it would have also been forested. So, you know, this is, again, these sites date back to right in the middle of the Younger Dryas. So evidently, there would have been some significant climate change that shifted the whole ecosystem. But it was entirely different. And everywhere you look to, there's like dry riverbeds, a lot of that sort of stuff going on. Yeah, I think a lot of stuff's been looted, yeah. Chat keeps dropping here in the middle of the Pacific. You're on a ship in the middle of the Pacific. That sounds tough. For some reason I picked Kyle as my target here the whole time. I do like this little shot. I was testing like the modes. It's like it has these droney shots. Like this one, it highlights the person and keeps them in the center, and then it'll do like this expanding spiral, which I think this is actually a really cool shot right here. Just that pan out. So cool. We had 3 drone warriors. It's me and Chris and Russ were standing around flying drones. Drone racing footage? No. I was definitely zooming around at some points. We'll see if I have any of that. I literally haven't looked at any of this footage yet. This is it. You're seeing it now. Just the fact this is so close to Göbekli Tepe. I think that's it over there. Yeah, that is it over there. You can see the white of the enclosure. Left Tahiti yesterday on the way to Hawaii. Ah. I'm sure there were trees here. There must have been, given there were leopards and bears. There was definitely foliage in this area. What else we got? There's Russ's drone. Yeah, it should be an intro. I'm going to have to go through this a bit more carefully and find some shots and stuff to use. I hope you all enjoyed that video. I'm trying to make these things a bit more of a regular upload to my second channel here, the Uncharted X Live channel. So please do consider subscribing to this channel. That really helps me out. Big thanks to Dub Selector for taking the time to edit these videos. Very much appreciate his help on this. Also, if you want to catch me live over on Twitch, I am streaming 2-3 times a week. I generally announce when I'm going to stream in my Discord, so if you want to join the Discord, take a look below in the comments. There'll be a link to the Discord. And if you like the work that I'm doing, please do consider supporting the channel through the value for value model. There's lots of ways that you can support the work that I'm doing. It's all outlined on my website. It's unchartedx.com/support. We'll catch you in the next one.
The hanky panky. Without the hanky panky, come on. Come on, man.
Thank you.
In the 1990s, an archaeological site was discovered that changed the way that historians view human history. Dating back nearly 11,500 years, Göbekli Tepe pushed back the date of human megalithic architecture by millennia, and this harkened in a new golden age in archaeology, one that saw a cradle of civilization here in southeastern Turkey. But after the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists set their sights on another location, one that they hoped to inform their understanding of Göbekli Tepe further. However, when they began digging there, they found that it was unlike anything they had ever seen. It is a site which is far older, far less understood, and far more mysterious. And today, it is still not even open to the public. However, I am proud to say that my team and I have been granted unique access to this ancient site. And for the very first time, a real archaeologist has been permitted to film here and share it with the world. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Milo Rossi, and it is a privilege and an honor to welcome you to Karahan Tepe.
Karahan Tepe was initially discovered in 1997, but it wouldn't be until 2000 before the site was finally surveyed. Between 2000 and 2011, the archaeological site was surveyed as part of the Şanlıurfa City Cultural Inventory. Initial excavations at the site indicated that it also had T-pillars, leading archaeologists to believe that it may be related to the same culture that built Göbekli Tepe.
But they found that the construction at this site was completely different. Unlike the large T-stones at Göbekli Tepe, which were carved separately and erected in a specialized platform carved into the bedrock, Karahan Tepe is unique in that almost the entire site is carved directly out of the bedrock itself. Ooh, there's a little bit of altitude here.
Yeah, I'm noticing.
As you'll remember about Göbekli Tepe, it also comes at an inflection point where humanity was just beginning to discover agriculture and moving away from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle.
Karahan Tepe has been dated to the pre-pottery Neolithic, the same time frame as the much more well-known Göbekli Tepe. And this site is also of an immense antiquity, with the site being dated back between 9,500 and 10,000 BCE, making this ancient site nearly 12,000 years old. Every site of human occupation predating Karahan Tepe is one that was inhabited by transient hunter-gatherers, people who were either migratory or were merely passing through the area. This means that Karahan Tepe is the oldest permanent settlement ever discovered on the face of our planet.
And if you look over the hill to my shoulder, you can see why people would have wanted to live here. As a group that were still primarily hunters, this would have offered a vantage point that you can see for miles. It's also worth noting that the climate would have been vastly different. At the end of the last glacial maximum, the world was cooler and wetter than it is today. And as we were traveling to get here, we passed countless dry riverbeds with massive exposed stones that showed evidence of wear from hundreds, if not thousands of years of rapid water movement. And so when we look at this valley, we have to remember that we are seeing it as we see it in our modern climate, and not as those who built Karahan Tepe would have seen it in their heyday. Damn, that's amazing. And like many of the sites around here, water plays a large role, as we will see shortly. One of the first rooms that you'll notice at Karahan Tepe is this one, which appears to be some form of large pool. Some archaeologists believe that this was supposed to be intentionally filled with water, and there is enough evidence to back that up with several carved channels around it. You can actually see one of the channels sort of in the rock over there, which leads down like a bit of a drainage spout. And on this side, you can see another one of those drainage channels. This one, however, is a lot deeper. This room with the central pool also has a bench on the back side, and this is the first of many carvings that we are going to see at this site. Along the base of this bench is a carved image of a serpent, which runs from that end all the way to somewhere in the middle here. It's a little hard to tell because of how weathered it is. However, on the far right, we can see a carving of a wolf
What's up,
or a
Nick?
dog
How are
of
you,
some
man?
kind.
We'll give you a flex in the sun.
Arguably one of the most well-known features of Karahan Tepe is the penis room. Carved directly out of the bedrock, this room depicts 10 enormous stone phalluses. However, there is one pillar which is unlike the rest. While the 10 penises are carved out of the stone itself, there was only one pillar which was actually moved here. If you get a little bit closer, you can actually see it. It's this long, thin pillar which sits right at the center. Well, you can't see
Good
from
one,
this
my man.
angle. This pillar
It is
is
good to
home
always-
to
it
the
is
first
good
of
to
many
flex,
leopard
man.
carvings that we will see at
Just
this
warms
site.
up all
It is
your
only the
micro
tip of the
muscles.
iceberg of the animal significance.
The penis room shows a similar emphasis as Göbekli Tepe did on masculinity. It is believed that the Tas Tepler cultures were ones who put a large emphasis on reproduction and fertility. This is likely due to the harsh environment that these people lived in, one where their lifespans would have only been around 35 years. So in a world as harsh as the one that these people would have lived in, it's very likely that a large emphasis would have been put on reproduction in order to continue the cultural traditions.
Arguably, the 11th most prominent feature of the penis room is the head, which overlooks the entire site. Some have claimed that it is a serpent, others claim that it is some sort of deity, but nobody is certain. The thing that I love the most about Karahan Tepe is the fact that it's still an active archaeological site, and just being here, it feels so much more unique to many of the other sites we've been to on this trip. For example, you can just walk across the surfaces of the rocks here, and you can just find your own carved water channels that still sit in the bedrock. For example, we can see two very clearly here that meet in the middle and continue to run underneath these stones and just disappear into the ground. There's also this, which seems like another man-made carving. I don't really know what this is. Maybe it's part of a larger carving, I don't know. It looks too thin to be another water channel, but it's definitely something. What's so neat about this being an active archaeological site is as you walk around, you will just pass a test pit like this, where you could just kind of see the tops of some stones sticking out of the ground. And it's amazing to think that we could be back here in a couple years and, you know, what could be hidden under the ground right beneath our feet. Now, while mine is not the first film crew that has been allowed here, mine has been the first archaeological film crew allowed here. Although there has been some major developments since the last time anyone has shot here. That being that this site has been confirmed to have dwellings in it. Previous interpretations of this site have relied on it being more of a cultural and ceremonial center and had no idea that it was a dwelling. And they actually have found a couple graves at this site, though they aren't fully understood. There was one that they were working on excavating who they believed to be someone of importance, but the structural integrity of the hill was preventing them from digging any further. So it is interesting that we are going to be able to learn something about this culture within this hill because there are human burials here, which is something that I don't believe they have found as of yet at Göbekli Tepe. But one of the most incredible things about Karahan Tepe is that it is at most 5% excavated. As we walk across this hill, the entire site is littered with the tops of T-pillars, meaning that what we are looking at is not a small hilltop settlement, but a massive mountain that was completely covered in a settlement at one time. For example, right here, if you look at the ground, there is the top of a T-pillar literally just sticking out of the floor. And so it's amazing to stand here and touch this and realize that underneath us is something that is going to change the way we view this site. And I think that that's one of the most important things to note, is that anyone who tries to make an interpretation on this place is doing it based on a tiny amount of evidence. I took a wrong turn at Karahan Tepe and now I'm in the jungle. I was told there'd be fun and games, but all I'm getting is eaten alive by mosquitoes. It was cooler in my head. The observant among you will have noticed that this doesn't look like the arid foothills of southeastern Turkey. And you'd be right about that, because it isn't. It's the cloud forest of South America. I'm currently on an assignment stint in South America doing some work looking at some potential archaeological sites and doing surveys of hummingbirds, all of which are things I'm not going to be talking about here, but what I do want to talk about is that I'm going to be doing another tour. For those of you that don't know, all the videos of Turkey were part of a tour that I guided, and I am honored to have been asked to guide another one, this time to the Sacred Valley of Peru. The upcoming tours will take place the last week of September and the first week of October of this year, of our Lord, 2023. I made that joke when I announced Turkey, didn't I? During this expedition, my guests and I will be exploring some of the mega-colossal Incan constructions, such as Ollantaytambo, Sacsayhuaman, and of course Machu Picchu. Tickets for the two archaeological tours in the last week of September and first week of October are on sale now. Get them while the getting's good. You get to come hang out with me, my awesome cameraman Henry, and it's going to be a whale of a time. You'll get to kind of see the behind the scenes of the videos and get to see the sites yourself. And the second week of October, we'll be doing a bit more of a journey into the mind, as I've also been asked to participate in an ayahuasca retreat. So if I come back ranting and raving about aliens, you'll know why. So for those of you who are interested in the traditional medicine side of South American culture, you can join me for that as well. And if you like the sound of all of this, there's also a package deal where you can do both the last week of the archaeological tour and the traditional medicine retreat. And last but not least, this project is being done with the Community Garden, who do charity work in South America. They work directly with and are partly run by indigenous South Americans, making sure that the funds are being directed to the right places and that everything is being done ethically and appropriately. And because of this, all of the excess proceeds that don't go to, paying the staff and paying for the place we're staying are going to be going to the Community Garden charity. And that is a pretty good cause. But for now, I am going to be losing my light in about an hour, and I have more hummingbirds that I need to take pictures of. So let's get right back in the video. If you want to know more about the retreats, I will leave a link to the video where I talk about it in the description. Hope you guys are enjoying the turkey series, by the way. Really, really humid here. See you guys in a bit. As we enter the center of the site, we are faced with the largest currently excavated room. Once again, this site is also carved directly out of the bedrock and features benches which are carved into the landscape on the back. Now, we're going to show a picture because from here we can't see it very well, but on those 3 pillars on the back, if you look at the leftmost pillar, there is a depiction of someone with a leopard print pattern on them. Now, recently there has been a misconception that this is supposed to be some sort of depiction of a lost civilization who inspired this site. However, to draw that interpretation from that stone is to completely neglect all of the other discoveries at this site. Karahan Tepe is littered with depictions of leopards. And now that may seem rather unusual being in southeastern Turkey. It's not a place that you would really expect to find leopards, but we have to imagine that this climate would have been vastly different than what it is today. In fact, leopards are not even a stranger to some of the longer residents in this area, with there being an endemic species up until the 1970s. Archaeologists have also noted reoccurring motifs at a lot of these Tepler sites. For example, at Göbekli Tepe, there is a huge emphasis on foxes, which dominate the pillars all across the site. Whereas at Karahan Tepe, the favorite iconography seems to be leopards. And there is physical evidence of this as well, with leopard bones being found at this site. This supports the idea that the image found on that stone is not supposed to be some sort of deity, but rather a depiction of ceremony or somebody wearing a leopard skin. This is further supported by both Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe not containing any creatures that are mythical. Every animal found at these sites is something which exists in reality.
Much like at Göbekli Tepe, the builders of Karahan Tepe had a fascination with animals. Not only are there depictions of animals such as snakes and birds found carved into the rock, but there have also been some smaller artifacts found as well. Among these is a small piece of stone believed to have once been part of a pillar, and it depicts 3 different, now broken, animal forms: the face and hind legs of 2 different rabbits and the back legs of a gazelle. These would have been prolific game animals for the people of Karahan Tepe at the time, and still persist in massive quantities in the valley today. A second and more elaborate smaller artifact discovered is a large carved stone head. This is a fairly unique discovery, as both Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe lack a lot of sculptures showing human heads. However, this carving is quite ornate. It shows stylized brow ridges, a large nose, and even rows of barred teeth. What the statue represents, whether or not it was once attached to a larger body or whether it was broken intentionally, are still unknown. However, in my opinion, the most interesting artifact recovered from Karahan Tepe is known as the totem pole. It is a small statuette that bears a superficial resemblance to a totem pole from Native American cultures. This small carving seems to depict a seated or squatting man carrying a leopard on his back, an interpretation which is corroborated by the other leopard iconography found around the site, including the large carving of a man with a leopard print pattern on him, which some have erroneously claimed is evidence of aliens or some sort of lost Atlantean civilization, but is in all likelihood a man wearing a leopard skin. The Karahan totem is one of 2 totems found from the Tas Tepler people, with a second small totem being found at Göbekli Tepe. This carving depicts what appears to be several people stacked on top of one another, and the similarities between these 2 carvings highlights the cultural diffusion that would have been present in this area at the time.
Leopards are not the only animal whose bones have been found at this site. Archaeologists who have been responsible for the research and discoveries at Karahan Tepe have also, oh my god, have also broken their ankles on these rocks probably, have also discovered the bones of crocodiles, giraffes, wolves, and bears. Again, all animals that one doesn't really think of being endemic to the Anatolian steppe, but we have to remember that the environment would have been vastly different at the time. Archaeologists are still not entirely sure whether or not these were species which were hunted directly here, or if they were part of a vast trade network. And evidence for a vast trade network is supported just beyond these bones. Archaeologists at Karahan Tepe have also found obsidian tools, and with no obsidian occurring anywhere within a 200-mile radius of this site, it is clear that they were either going on long expeditions or part of a trade network in order to get it. The other thing that you really notice standing at the site is just how big it is. This room is absolutely massive, and it's amazing to think about what this place would have looked like in its heyday before all of these pillars had been collapsed and covered with, rain and dirt for 12,000 years. It is pretty amazing to just be walking around here and just be able to look at the ground and the things that you'll see. Like, this stone is probably something that there's not a paper written about and is something that's probably not going to be talked about in most publications. But just looking at the craftsmanship of this and realizing that this circular stone was carved by someone and it had an intent and a purpose, and here it is after 12,000 years sitting right in front of us. One of the features of this site that I find the most interesting is this pillar. Now, this is a very recent discovery, only excavated within the last year or so. And you'll notice on this pillar a similar motif to one found at Göbekli Tepe. And that is depicting the pillar itself as being a human torso with 2 arms on either side. Well, 1 arm on either side, but 2 arms in total. However, this one is a little bit different, as the hands on each of these arms that come and meet at the front of the T-pillar each have 8 fingers. And now, even though this site is pretty different from Göbekli Tepe, it's very similar in a lot of ways as well. It's also interesting to look at the tops of these stones and see how weathered the very tips are. When we walk around over on some of the surrounding hills, we're going to see these tops of stones sticking out, and they are not the brown color that you see in the excavation site, but that kind of white weathered rock that you can see at the top. And so when we see the tops of those stones sticking out of these fields, I want you to try and imagine what's below it. Literally 95% of a site that is completely unexcavated. It's really compelling to think about, and one that just lets your mind run wild. Since Karahan Tepe is only about 5% excavated, you can walk pretty much all over this. Hill and find evidence of all of the sites that have yet to be uncovered. Now, it's a little bit hard to tell about the stones at our feet, but what I can tell you is that this hill over here absolutely contains another archaeological site. On the edge of this hill is a very obvious circle of stones. You can see what I mean here about the top of the weathered T-pillars that's sort of this more gray color. But around my feet is what is undeniably another extension of this archaeological site. I wish I had more things to say while standing here, give some sort of academic spiel, but really all I can do is just be absolutely baffled by the fact that I am standing on this site right now, and knowing that somewhere below my feet is something that could completely change the way that we think about human history. Henry, get over here, touch this rock.
Rock, touch.
All right.
Much like Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe also shows evidence of being buried. And just like Göbekli Tepe, the burying seems to have taken place through a combination of intentional burial and landslides. Some have claimed that these structures were buried as some sort of time capsule to warn future civilizations about their impending doom, but that is a little bit ridiculous, and if we use just a tiny bit of critical thinking, it makes much more sense to understand that this landscape would have been shifting at the time that these buildings were constructed. Large earthen walls exposed to erosion would slide down and bury these sites, leaving the inhabitants with the option of whether to try and excavate the whole thing again or simply finish the job themselves and bury the rest of it. Enclosures that show evidence of being entirely intentionally buried were likely just finished being used, and were therefore covered up to reclaim the land as the people went on to work on other greater, newer projects.
And if you follow me down here, you can see more of these pillars sticking out of the ground. This right here is actually evidence of an illegal dig. Now, I don't think they got deep enough to actually affect anything, but they did manage to uncover this top of the T-pillar. So this confirms that the things that are standing around us are probably just more of these. I'm hoping to be able to come back here as soon as possible and be able to monitor the excavation as it goes on, and it's amazing to think that I'm standing on top of something that I may be able to return in a few years and have it excavated and know what I'm standing on top of right now. There's more of them down here. I'm not going to walk all the way down there because we got other stuff to look at, but you can see these little pillars just sticking out all over the mountainside. And so when you try and use your mind's eye to reconstruct this place, you're not just looking at one small enclave on the side of the hill over there. You are looking at a mountain that was completely occupied, something which was totally dominated by this culture that decided to build all across it. The evidence for flint working is literally everywhere. If you come to the ground right here at this sort of exposed washout, you could find little tiny pieces of flint just all over the ground. And most impressively, this wasn't found by me, this was found by someone else that we're here with, a hand axe. Just here, is sitting for about 12,000 years. Oh, that's amazing. I need to, get some of its power into my, soul. I cannot believe this. I need to take a picture of that. Oh my god. I want to be professional and, give some talk about this, but I can't. I'm holding a 12,000-year-old hand axe sitting on top of the oldest settlement that we've ever discovered. I don't really have a professional speech to give right now. Oh my God, this is cool. Well, let's see what else is around here. Yeah, there is just evidence of these. Look at this. That's like a very obviously flaked piece of flint with a really sharp edge on it. It is. It's just like looking through an old stone hand axe tool factory. And hand axes are not the only things that we're finding here. There's also pieces of bone, and this is not something, from the last 50 years. This is a very, very old piece of bone. It's so hard, it practically has the consistency of stone. I'm not nearly good enough with bones to be able to tell what this is. In fact, even if I was, this is probably not enough bone to go off of, but it's amazing that this, could be, some animal that hasn't lived here in the last 10,000 years. Well, I guess this guy hasn't lived in the 10,000 years no matter what, actually. There's a dirt pile over here, and we're gonna see if there's anything floating around that has been picked up. Ha! So it seems like people have been making a little pile here of all of the flint tools they've been finding, but these are just beautiful. I mean, the craftsmanship on these, look at you can see that in the sun, the ridges on that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, look at that. That is just amazing. History, baby. Look at this. There's another drainage cut here. And here, well, something that I think is important to note is, as we've been walking here, I've been repeatedly referring to the people that built Karahan Tepe, and that's because we don't have another name for them. Despite the cultural similarities between the people at Karahan Tepe and Göbekli Tepe, they have not been assigned a culture. And these two sites are just the tip of an iceberg. There are 40 other confirmed hill sites which have structures just like this on them, and that estimate goes as high as 120, and those are just the ones we know about. And yet, despite all of this material evidence, they still have not been given a cultural name. And as an archaeologist, it puts me into a bit of a weird position where, what more do you need to define a culture? We are standing on top of a hill that contains the oldest dwellings in the world, worked into the bedrock of the mountain itself. It is a site that is advanced and sophisticated, one that has motifs that are found at sites that are upwards of 50 miles away, and yet we still don't have a name for these people. It is kind of easy to see here how archaeology still has a very modern European bias, where just about every culture in Europe, no matter how small their footprint is, has a name. And it kind of blows my mind that there has still not been a name assigned to these people. If I were to go out on a limb, I would assume that it will probably be the Test-Hepler civilization, considering that that's what these hills have been called. But as of right now, they are nameless, despite leaving behind poor evidence that many civilizations in Europe. But why does it matter to give this civilization a name? You could argue that it doesn't really matter, and that the presence of this site is one that is confirmation enough that this group of people existed. But I think that the real crime is that by not giving them a name, it removes the human aspect from this site. It allows us to let our minds wander to much more fanciful and outlandish interpretations of the things that we see here. By not giving a name to these people, it can let people grasp at straws to try and explain this in a way which is completely unreasonable. As I've mentioned before, many of these sites in southeastern Turkey have had countless misinterpretations of them peddled on the internet, but each and every one of them operates by removing the human aspect of these sites. It is much easier to explain these sites as the works of people who were inspired by some lost advanced civilization, and it's much more complicated to try and look at the actual cultural development of these sites. And so by stripping these people of a name to their civilization, we open the door for them to be completely bastardized. You never see anyone questioning the origins of ancient Rome or any of those places. Civilizations which are well documented and have countless instances of cultural depictions left behind. And this site is no different. I promise you, within the next 10 years, we will know more about this civilization than many in Europe. And the sooner that we are actually able to begin to look at these sites as culturally connected to one another and not as isolated incidents, we as a species will be able to learn more about our history. One of the particularly interesting features of Karahan Tepe is this, an unfinished T-pillar. It still sits in the limestone bedrock around it, and was never actually removed or placed anywhere. And it's still, if you look under here, you can see that it's still completely connected, but they had started to cut into the rock underneath. And up around this side, you can see that they had fully managed to actually excavate around it. Oh my god, is this another hand axe? Oh no, it's just a lake. This looks like something man-made though, look at this. This one also has some interesting kind of circles in it. Don't mind the, 12,000-year-old hand axe shard here. There's like this kind of circular indentation and a hole in the center. No one is exactly sure as to why they never finish this T-pillar, but I do think that this is a case of the simplest explanation being the most likely. Just look at how big this thing is. They probably started, were like, well, I don't want to move that. That's way too big, so they just made a smaller one. Garan Tepe is one of the most fascinating archaeological sites that I have ever heard of. As a kid, I grew up thinking that I lived at a time when everything had already been discovered, that every blank corner of the map had been filled in, and that there was nothing left to learn. But in the Tastepler Hills of southern Turkey, we learned that this is not the case, because even today there is more to be discovered, and within our lifetime, the idea of human history is going to be completely rewritten. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching, and I cannot express what an honor it has been to be able to come here to the cradle of civilization itself to talk about some of the oldest settlements ever discovered. It is truly a dream come true, and to be able to share it with you all is something that brings me an immense amount of joy. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be able to film here and to be able to convey the significance and the exciting history of this site to you all. Once again, I would like to thank you all very much for watching. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Milo Rossi. Remember to stay curious, stay inquisitive, and remember that there is still so much left to discover.
Walking to Göbekli Tepe.
Cool.
How you feel, Mile?
Oh, I am stoked. I am so stoked. I watched that weird hype trailer in the visitor center, and I've never been more ready for anything in my life. We are currently on the road to probably one of the best known archaeological sites in modern history. Although its history is anything but modern, the reason it has found itself in the limelight of the science community is because of just how old it is. It's a site that dates back a staggering 12,000 years to the Neolithic period, a site that predates agriculture by about 1,000 years. Howdy friends, my name is Milo Rossi, and today it is my great pleasure to welcome you to none other than the Potbelly Hill himself, Göbekli Tepe.
Today, Göbekli Tepe is one of the most well-known archaeological sites in the world.
Oh my
The site was
God,
originally
AI
discovered and
man. Oh my
identified as a
God.
place of
Can't believe you
archaeological
wrote
significance
that.
as far
I
back
think
as
this
the
is too much.
1960s. However, it wouldn't be until 1994 that excavations would officially begin at the site. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt was responsible for the first major excavations at the site, and it is because of the diligent work of Dr. Schmidt and his dedicated team of archaeologists that we know much of what we do today about Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe has only been known to the archaeological and scientific community for around the last 50 years. However, the people who traditionally occupy these lands have a lasting memory of it that dates back much, much farther. In fact, the Kurdish people who have occupied this area for countless generations had a ceremony that they would perform atop this hill.
The story goes that at the top of the Potbelly Hill there was a single tree, and on the spring equinox, the Kurdish people of the local surrounding communities would go up to the top of the hill. They would walk around the tree, I believe 7 times, and they would hang small pieces of cloth from its branches, and it was believed that with each piece of cloth, a wish would come true. But because it has recently become the site of an excavation, this tree on top of this hill, which has been used for generations, has become a bit of a strike point for some controversy. While the Kurdish people would typically come up here about once or twice a year in order to perform their ceremonies, because this is now an archaeological site, many of them have been restricted from doing this. Now, I heard that the original tree was actually lost during excavation of this site, but the Kurdish people believe less in the significance of the tree and more of the location. So another tree was planted to sort of take its place. However, even if the Kurdish people were allowed to perform the rituals that they have been for hundreds, if not thousands of years, it's pretty easy to see how the presence of this archaeological, now tourist site, can interfere with their ability to do that. With this wooden boardwalk and a paved area around the tree, and all of it confined to a very small area. Now, what's even more interesting about this is that the people who would perform these rituals would then eat off of stone pottery from the site. Pottery which we now know to be about 12,000 years old, predating just about every other archaeological site ever found with this level of complexity. So it's kind of interesting to think that while this may be a new site to us, to the people of the area, this is something which has likely been handed down for generation upon generation. This is the fun part of the tour where Henry gets to walk forwards and I get to walk backwards. So, as we walk up this boardwalk, we're approaching the main enclosures of Göbekli Tepe. This is going to be my first time seeing them, so I am really excited. This is something that I've been looking forward to pretty much as long as I've known about this place, so I am over the moon that it's finally happening. Yeah. I don't have words. I might need to just sit here for a bit before we film anything else. My brain is just like...
Half an hour processing for it.
Yeah, oh my... How am I supposed to act professional when I'm standing in front of this? Oh my gosh. I'm camouflaged right now. What's up, guys? My name's Milo. I'm the guy whose YouTube channel you're watching. And while now I may be pretty good at talking, you know what else I'm pretty good at? Writing. That's right, baby, it's my book again. Look, I finally got to the point where I don't have to have a sponsor that I don't really care about for every video, so instead of having to watch a terrible sponsor read about something you don't want, I'm gonna advertise this, which I know you want because you're watching this video. For those of you who don't know, this is my first published book, The Encyclopedia of the Weird and Wonderful, by me. It doesn't say me on it, it says... Who the fuck is this guy? The Encyclopedia of the Weird and Wonderful contains 100 entries covering about 200,000 years of human history. From pets, board games, and ancient meals, this book has everything. And it's also, I haven't actually said this in any of the reads yet, but it's also illustrated. The drawings are like really awesome. That's probably a major selling point, but I kind of forgot to mention it. So it's perfect for all you fellow ADHDers out there who don't feel like sitting down and looking at a book that has nothing but words in it for hours upon hours. Also, each entry is only like 600 words at most, so it's not like completely overbearing to read. The format and structure is kind of an experimental thing that I decided to try. I'm not going to bore you with it right now, but if you'd be curious to hear more about it, there's a link to the video where I announced this book in the description of this video. And I would say it's going to be in a card above me, but let's be honest, I'm not going to remember to do that. But the Encyclopedia of the Weird and Wonderful is available for pre-order now on Amazon. Link to that is in the description of this video. But anyway, remember to stay curious, stay inquisitive, and why am I giving an outro at the end of an ad read? Let's get right back into it. It's truly the complexity of Göbekli Tepe that makes it so unique. Up until very recently, archaeologists were under the impression that large-scale megalithic architecture was something that could only arise with the advent of agriculture, as once a community and a civilization has a pretty much inexhaustible supply of food, they could focus their energy into large-scale architectural projects and not have to be worrying about hunting and gathering. However, Göbekli Tepe is an outlier, where it was built at a time where, as of right now, we have no evidence that they were practicing agriculture in this area. However, the first widely accepted evidence of agriculture actually takes place about 1,000 years after Göbekli Tepe's construction, and only about 20 kilometers away from here. Now, there's not sufficient evidence for it yet, but if I were to give an educated guess, I would say that in the next couple years, we would likely find evidence that Göbekli Tepe was actually built around the same time as the first agriculture. It's a well-known archaeological principle that the things that you find are never going to be the oldest things. It is just the oldest thing you have found so far. And so to call Göbekli Tepe the oldest site on Earth would be a falsehood. But as of right now, it is the oldest temple of this complexity that we have ever found. And a hill is right. Because I have been talking and walking up this hill, and wow, these ancient people are really in shape. To put this site into perspective of just how old about 12,000 years really is, The Sumerian clay tablets, some of the first writing on Earth, dates back to about 5,000 years ago. So this site is so immense that it is nearly twice that age. And that's an age that is hard to wrap your head around, a age where the Earth itself would have been different. It would have been in a transitional stage from the end of the last ice age into the beginning of the climatic period that we're in now. And it is this climatic period that would have likely given this site such an immense significance to the hunter-gatherer groups that would have converged here. Because these hills, while slightly green today, would have been much more lush. The climate would have been wetter and cooler and allowed for a much more diverse array of wildlife. And this is part of the reason why people think that they were able to construct this without large-scale agriculture, because all of the resources they needed would have been available in the wild, just in the hills surrounding the site. Whether it be sheep, ancient cereal grains, and other livestock, it was pretty much all able to be found in the surrounding hillsides. And so as we stand on this overlook, one can imagine how strategic of a location this would have been for all of the communities in this area. Not only is it a place where you can see the migrations of animals in the valley below you, but it's a place where everyone from all of the areas around this would be able to coalesce and converge on top of this mountain.
Göbekli Tepe is home to 3 different layers. You'll be shocked to know that these layers are referred to as layers 1, 2, and 3.
The most recognizable part of Göbekli Tepe comes from what is referred to as Layer 3. It is the oldest section of Göbekli Tepe, dating back nearly 12,000 years.
And is home to 4 enormous stone enclosures. Enclosures A and B are the smallest of the discoveries at Layer 3, and they are situated on the southwest side of the dig site. And to the north and east are the 2 much larger enclosures. Enclosure C, home to a spectacular 3D relief of a leopard, and the enormous Enclosure D, home of the infamous and widely misunderstood vulture stone. The compounds of Layer 3 are between 30 and 100 feet in diameter, and it is from these structures that perhaps the most infamous piece of Göbekli Tepe comes from, the enormous limestone T-pillars. Up until now, only 4 of these enclosures have been fully excavated, but geophysical surveying done at the hill surrounding Göbekli Tepe has indicated that there could be upwards of 16 more of these stone enclosures, each one potentially housing upwards of 8 individual T-stones, bringing the current estimated total of the amount of T-stones at Göbekli Tepe to around 200.
Now, all of these 4 main enclosures have a couple things in common. Every single one of them has 2 large T-shaped pillars that sit in the middle and face one another. All of these pillars are made out of the local limestone, the pillars of which were actually mined just about 100 meters away from here on the hilltop, and they would have been carried down here and placed into these flattened spaces that the ancient people would have carved and inserted the pillars into the ground. If you look down there, you can actually see the raised portions that are carved directly out of the bedrock itself. They would have carved a hole into the middle of this where they could have planted the large T-shaped stones into and then filled it in around in order to keep them standing. It's currently unknown as to whether or not these sites had roofs on them, but there's been a significant amount of evidence to suggest that there was. Some of this comes from the form of plaster, or the remains of plaster, which has been found on the walls. This would be something that would be delicate enough in the elements that probably would not be able to exist without a roof. And on top of that, if you kind of look around and use some of the context clues of the area, you can also piece together that there was likely roofs on a lot of these structures. For example, if you look down here, this is one that I just noticed, is you'll see these sort of notches on a lot of the top of the stones, and these look very indicative of something where you would be able to put, you know, a piece of wood in there, a piece of lumber that would eventually go up and meet something in the middle to create some sort of roof shape. There's similar flutings on the rocks over there. You can see one on the edge of the rock over there, and these are also heavily present at the enclosure on the far side that we're going to go look at in a minute. Now, one of the other features that is very common at this Layer 3 piece of Göbekli Tepe is the iconography on the pillars. Every single one of them is adorned with all kinds of abstract and semi-realistic carvings.
The pillars of Göbekli Tepe are undoubtedly best known for their animal carvings, with the limestone reliefs featuring everything from lions, boars, foxes, donkeys, gazelles, reptiles, snakes, arthropods, and countless other living creatures.
And what is very interesting about this site is that there's no mythological creatures, there's no hybrids. Every single one is an animal that actually exists, meaning that the mythos of these people was not one that involved the creation or fabrication of, you know, mythological creatures in order to sustain it. So if you look at this pillar right here, you can see a pretty famous depiction of one of the foxes, these sort of long-shaped shape, and this is not the only one at the site. Now, if you look at this pillar in the back, there's 5 cranes on the top of it and 2 wild boars, but 2 more animals that are very common throughout the pillars on this site. One of the most famous carvings of Göbekli Tepe is actually present on that pillar side there, and that is a leopard. It's one of the few that is sort of a 3D relief, one that fully comes off of the side of the pillar. The rest tend to be etched onto the surfaces with only a little bit of, three-dimensional space. But this one is very large. The significance of that pillar is not entirely known, but a leopard is another piece of iconography that you will see not only here, but also at Karahan Tepe. And this is made all the more interesting because at Karahan Tepe, they have actually found evidence of leopard bones and leopards that show an actual, leopard skin print, unlike a lot of the symbols which you find here. Now, most of these symbols found at Göbekli Tepe are animals, and in fact, there are almost no human figures found here. But 2 of the suggestions of human figures are actually on these 2 large pillars in the center of this enclosure. And now, they may not look like humans right off the bat, but if you look at the side, you'll see sort of this V shape, this triangular shape, and those are actually arms. Both of them reach down, and on the front of these pillars on the opposite side are hands. Around their waist is a belt, and on the front, right below where the hands meet, is a loincloth. And if we're to extrapolate this up, I guess that would make the top of these pillars, shoulders or something of that sort. But all of these figures don't have heads, and that is something else that you're going to begin to see as a theme as we walk through this site. So from this angle, you can see the hands that are wrapped around the front of the stone, as well as the continuation of the belt and the loincloth that hangs down the front. And the loincloth is another motif that we're going to see carried over not only in the human iconography, but in the animal symbols as well. It's also amazing to stand here and try and absorb how big these pillars truly are. When we were kind of in the, entranceway, there's a model of the vulture stone, which I'll talk about in a moment. And, you stand halfway up the vulture stone. It's immense. But when you look down here and you look at the vulture stone in comparison to the large T-shaped pillars in the center of this enclosure, these central pillars just dwarf the stone. And I know that obviously we can't do it, but I wish that we could stand down there to really get a sense of scale for just how massive these stones truly are. The technical skill and manpower needed to move and erect these stones is just astonishing. It really proves that these people were highly sophisticated and worked together to produce something that is, it has withstood the test of time unlike any other ancient site in the world. Another amazing thing about Enclosure D is the large T-shaped pillar, which has the person with the loincloth on it, is on a very decoratively carved platform carved directly out of the limestone bedrock. Around the base of this platform is more of the cranes which we have seen at other points in the site, except these ones are meticulous, carved out of the bedrock itself instead of onto the face of one of these stones. We don't actually see this at the base of the pillar next to it, and so these ones are sort of an outlier, but just a very unique little detail that you'll notice as you survey this site. There are also some of the few 3D carvings at the site, with the other notable exception being the leopard carving at Enclosure C. I came here with a whole script in mind that I'm, working to follow, but honestly, the most exciting part about this is just being able to look at this site and sort of piece together the things that you're actually looking at, because so much of it, it's just so rich, where everything you look at is almost a little discovery in and of itself. For example, if you look down here into the middle of this enclosure, you can see that the foot of some of these T-stones has these circular indentations that are, on opposite sides of the pillar. I don't exactly know what those are for, so I can't concretely give any evidence, but whether they are offerings or some sort of ceremonial space is really anyone's guess. One of the most famous but vastly misunderstood features of Göbekli Tepe is the infamous vulture stone, which you can actually see if you look right down here.
The vulture stone is best identified by its large realistic motif of a vulture, as I'm sure you could imagine. Recently, there have been archaeological misconceptions that this stone represents some specific astronomical date. It has been claimed that this stone points to one specific star in the sky, and that the people who built Göbekli Tepe made this carving to warn us about some sort of calamitous event that ended up befalling them. The reason that some have been able to make this outlandish claim seem even remotely possible is because they don't show you any of the other context at the site. So let's put on our thinking caps for a moment and figure out what this stone could represent using what we know about the site. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were at a transitional state between agriculture and hunting and gathering, and the rest of the site shows countless motifs of animals. For this type of lifestyle, these people would have been entirely in tune with their surroundings. They would have been aware of every animal's range, behavior, and migratory schedule and extent. Because of this, one of the the running theories as to what the Vulture Stone is actually a calendar. But it is not a calendar pointing to the end of the world. In fact, it's a calendar that is most likely not even astronomical. Instead, it divides the year into two seasons, the dry season between May and October, and the wet season between October and May. Therefore, these stones suggest that the seasons were not determined by the stars, but by the animals around them. These animals would have all had cyclical and predictable cycles of hibernation, migration, and mating seasons. One of the most common motifs found at Göbekli Tepe is none other than the crane, one of the most infamous migratory birds. Cranes did, and still do, enter this part of Turkey around the beginning of the wet season, or our winter time. And so their arrival would have been something that people would have anticipated year after year. The Vulture Stone not only shows these cranes, which were a harbinger of the wet season, but it also shows a large relief of a scorpion. During the dry season, people would have little interaction with scorpions, as they would be out in the fields and in their burrows. However, during the wet season, the increased amount of water would force scorpions out of their nests and into other dry places, frequently inhabited by people, meaning that even though they coexisted at all times of the year, during the wet season, the climate would have forced these two organisms together. Further evidence for this being a calendar stone come from what appear to be sheaves of wheat or some sort of grain in the fields. And finally, the protrusion on the vulture's stomach indicates that it could be pregnant, which would make sense considering that most vultures would lay their eggs during the winter months. And above one of its wings is a circle. Now, some have claimed that the circle is supposed to be the sun. However, it's very unlikely that that is the case when you look at the rest of the site, because the rest of the site has an even more interesting theme, and that is a theme of severed heads. And this one appears to be holding one in its wing. Some even theorize that the carving directly above the circle is a human body that has been relieved of its head that is now falling onto the vulture's wing, while others claim that it's a crane, another piece of symbology which is very common at this site. While this hypothesis has not yet been corroborated by the scientific community, it is one that at least takes into account the surroundings of Göbekli Tepe. We know for a fact that the people who occupied this site had a fascination with human skulls. In fact, from Göbekli Tepe alone, they have retrieved 3 pieces of human skulls, each of which bear an unusual carved shape in them. This, as well as countless other non-carved skull fragments found around the site, and the statues, all of which bear no head, has led some archaeologists to believe that Göbekli Tepe was at one time home of a skull cult. Now, well, some think that the animals found at this site could be a indication of a calendar or some sort of teaching tool for what animals to hunt. There's also theories that they were simply protectors or some sort of spirit. As you notice, there's a lot of, kind of scary animals there. Things like, leopards and bulls. These things which still exude the idea of power. Even the iconography of a vulture is something which is common in a lot of different cultures throughout the world today, with people in Tibet still practicing sky burials, where they will allow their dead to be picked apart by these carrion birds and returned to the earth. And this is a symbol that we see played out time and time again by cultures and groups of people who are very in tune with their surroundings. And so it's amazing to try and think not only about the architectural and archaeological complexity of this site, but also the society that the people who lived here would have existed in. However, the true meaning behind this stone is still up for debate, but it's important when one is trying to actually interpret its meaning to not just look at this as an isolated piece in this massive and ancient site, because the biggest disservice that we do ourselves when trying to interpret these things is to neglect to try and interpret the rest of its surroundings. As this was not erected as a single piece, it was erected as a part of a large ceremonial center. So to neglect to talk about the intent of the rest of the site is doing no diligence and not really being able to fully inform the true history of the location. Now, in this smaller enclosure, enclosure B, we see a symbol that we actually saw on the other side, and that is the symbol of the fox. And I think here is a perfect time to talk about another reoccurring theme that we see at this site, and that is a theme of masculinity. Every single animal, save one at this site, is male, all of them displaying either a penis or other traits that are consistent with males of that species. Because of the frequency of male animals at this site, it's theorized that this place had something to do with some form of fertility rite. And now I know that that is the classic archaeological
psychological term whenever there is, something to do with human sexuality. But because of this reoccurring theme and a lot of emphasis put on it, it seems to be a fairly logical conclusion. But the motif of male animals at this site is a theme which cannot be overlooked, especially when looking at other sites that were inspired or at least related to this culture, such as Karahan Tepe, which still contains that male motif.
The lives that the Tastepler people would have lived were incredibly harsh, with skeletal evidence suggesting that their lifespan may have been just around 35 years. With a short lifespan and high mortality rate, it makes sense that these people would have put a huge emphasis on reproduction. And to emphasize this point just a little bit more, archaeologists believe that these stones would have taken so long to carve that they would have been intergenerational projects.
Someone who started a T-pillar wouldn't even be alive to see it finished, so this is a place that is steeped in generation upon generation of work.
The construction of these sites would have been colossally labor-intensive, and evidence for the methods of construction can be found littered around the site. One of the best examples of construction at the site comes from an unfinished enclosure, today known as Building E.
You can see in the back behind me this sort of flat plane with these raised portions in the middle, and those resemble very heavily the bases of some of the larger enclosures that are higher up the hill. They would have been places where the ancient people would have smoothed out the limestone and created these notches where the large T-shaped stones would have been stuck in to stand in place. Why they abandoned this site, we're not entirely sure. We theorize that the stone itself just wasn't quite as workable as some of the other places, and they faced some technical challenges while doing it, and so they decided to focus their energy on a place that would actually yield the proper results. But not only is there the platform where one of the enclosures would have eventually stood, but there are also these two circular depressions right here, as well as this piece on the other side, which has sort of these small round divots in the ground. Now, I haven't seen too much about what this is theorized to be, but if I were to give any sort of educated guess, I would say that this is probably an attempt to dig a hole that just was never finished. So this could indicate sort of how some of these holes were dug in a middle phase. So they would, scoop out these things, be able to break off the connectors between them and slowly work their way down into the bedrock. If you look at the top of a lot of these pillars, it actually has very similar, impact marks. And we were kind of sitting here speculating, like, why do you think that is? And I think that it's probably, Occam's razor. It's the most simple explanation, which is just like, the people who built this knew that those were the pillars, the parts of the pillars that they weren't going to be able to see, so they just didn't bother to smooth it out like they did for the rest of it. So there you go. Humans will always cut corners when presented with an opportunity to. Now, because of its immense antiquity and complexity, the site of Göbekli Tepe has also been home to a whole lot of archaeological misconceptions, with some postulating that it is evidence of some lost advanced Ice Age civilization, and others going as so far as to say that it was built by extraterrestrial visitors. However, these concepts and theories all tie back to a very outdated archaeological principle known as hyperdiffusion, the idea that ancient people were all taught by one lost source, and that every group on Earth was somehow descended from a shared pool of knowledge. Now, this was a belief system that was much more common during the fascistic early days of archaeology, where many archaeologists were inspired to do this work because they were being paid by those who were searching for evidence that their culture was descended from a ancient lost master race. Now, with the scientific evidence that we have to this day, we know that this is not the case. With sites like Göbekli Tepe being so closely related to other things like Karahan Tepe, which is located a mere 50 kilometers away, we know that this is not a global diffusion, but a regional diffusion, something which we see played out time and time again in just about every cultural region of the world. Yeah, it's very windy. Yeah, I think they probably came up here to fly kites. Cultural diffusion is something which has influenced just about every culture around the world, and is something which archaeologists and anthropologists are all too familiar with. And this site is no different, with symbols such as the T-stones being found at the surrounding areas, as well as other Mesopotamian sites south of here. It's something which one only needs to use a little bit of critical thinking to realize that, these people were in very close proximity with one another. Thank you, I would have died there. The people who lived in this area would have been very closely tied to one another. They would have been people who interacted with, hunted with, and even fought with one another. And so it's important that we don't oversimplify a site like this. It is far too easy for us to look at this and let our minds wander to the idea of lost advanced civilizations and aliens, when in reality it was built by people just like you and I, people who were motivated by their belief system just like you and I, people who wanted to live and love and to be able to create a home and hearth just like you and I. And so these are the stories that archaeology aims to tell, and we risk losing them as we try to oversimplify these sites and claim that they are just part of some master plan. In fact, cultural diffusion still plays a massive role in this site, as behind me is the very tree that the Kurdish people of this area would come and perform their ceremonies at. Now, one can argue whether or not they knew what was beneath their feet, or whether or not that knowledge had been handed down generation after generation, but one thing is for certain, and that is that this area contains an immense amount of cultural and spiritual significance. We too often see ourselves as being the end of history, a point where we are now just trying to dig up everything that has ever happened, or learn about the way that the world has always been. And it's far too easy to fall into that trap, especially as archaeologists and those with curious minds. But it's important to remember where we actually stand in this timeline, not at the end of it, but just merely at the most recent point. Someday, the site around us will be completely different, unrecognizable. 1,000 years from now, we don't know if there will still be an archaeological site here, or if the boards that stand below my feet will be buried to be uncovered someday by somebody else. Probably the thing about Göbekli Tepe that speaks the most to me is just how much there is to learn. Places like Göbekli Tepe still have upwards of 18 enclosures that are buried below the surface, with only 4 full enclosures actually excavated, and just those 4 have been able to change the way that we think about human history. You can see behind me actually an active excavation, one that has not been revealed to the public yet, and this is just a small piece of the puzzle of this area. We are surrounded by hills that have known human habitation for as long as memorable history and before, with Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe being just 2 of many archaeological sites out here that we have yet to learn about. With a massive emphasis on European archaeology, this part of the world has been vastly left out of the history books, and so it still has so much to teach us. And with just these 2 sites excavated and changing the way that we think about the ancient world, it's amazing to think about the discoveries that are going to be coming out of here within our lifetime. And these 2 are just the tip of a veritable iceberg of historical finds. 40 other sites confirmed to exist in the area around me, and up to 120 being speculated, or at least existing in some form of local legend. And so it's compelling to think about how much more there is to learn directly below our feet. And so for anyone who is interested in archaeology and history and wanting to learn more about the way that the world works and the way that ancient people lived, I can promise you that there's going to be no place where more information is going to come from within our lifetime than here in Eastern Turkey.
I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. Remember to stay curious, stay inquisitive, and I look forward to seeing you next time for an exclusive look at Karahan Tepe.
As excavation began, they found nothing like Göbekli Tepe. Its research is in such a stage of infancy that it is not even open to the public. However, my team and I have been granted unique access to this site, and for the very first time, a real archaeologist and camera crew have been allowed to document its unique history. It is my humble pleasure to welcome you to Karahan Tepe.
Right? No, down a little. Going down a little more? Yeah.
Right. Like putting the light down. No, it's only oh, I'm not thinking, oh, well, I don't think we'll take it down and
not that far.
Software between 0 greatest mistake about playing deciding how you play me. master. It's like here. Oh, not necessarily something. I think that's good. That lighting. I think both semis. That's how's it going? That's it. Yeah, here. Word. Both semis like not partners to friend. What you thought of that? Means great to go. Included last night with football. Right. So I feel like if you're looking at here, it's pretty right. It's good. Like you're looking, it's really pretty. Yeah. Like there's a lot of tricks over there.
Yeah. From the spectator point of view, this is too dark.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need.
We went to the museum first. The museum's always kind of nice. I've taken a few photos here and there in the museum. Luxor Museum's got some really nice pieces. I love this piece just because it actually is. I wanted some good photos of this for the geopolymer people, because it's like, you know how I sometimes will show like veins of other material. I'm like, this doesn't work with geopolymer. This is literally, they've carved this from a section of granite where it went from black to pink granite, or to red granite. It's absolutely beautiful stone. But you can see how that's like, they found this really cool piece of stone with the transition point, and they just made his head jet and his head on it. And you see this, how it works on the back here, where it's just, you know, that's basically a big vein of red granite running through this granodiorite. Very cool. Some nice Tefnuts, just cool Tefnut statues. They did have a very nice diorite, bowl here that's quite thin. And I do like the context under which these bowls, it's like they have this, you know, porphyry vase and diorite bowl, whatever. And of course it's in the context of all of this. This always cracks me up. Like pottery, you know, really primitive handmade pottery, shocker, and very hard stone vases. So it's just typical kind of thing. I'm trying to decide if I think this was like a pottery wheel or something they were showing here. Yeah, pottery wheel. I think here it's like he's pushing the pedal and they're turning a wheel. I think that's what it was. They definitely developed that later in, you know, later periods. Relief of a new chariot workshop. Yeah, so they're making chariot wheels. So this is like New Kingdom, right? It's New Kingdom. So this is after they'd figured out the wheel. They got the pottery wheel and they actually got chariot wheels. This is them doing stuff, making wheels, and they didn't have these wheels in the Old Kingdom. Seen on this relief fragment from a decorated tomb is set within a group of royal workshops. The architecture is indicated by register lines and by doors which are depicted frontally in typical Egyptian fashion. Craftsmen can be seen here making chariot wheels and statues of the king, among other objects. Cool. More alabaster canopic jars with actual lids. Akhenaten. This is now Luxor Temple. You can see the amount of repair work. I mean, there's a lot of this is repair work, but Yusuf's pointing out that these, you know, this is like, there's a difference between the statues here. It's a long story. Yusuf thinks that it's like, I don't agree with him on this. He thinks that these when you see crowns like this, where it's just the bowling pin hat, right? Just the bowling pin without the typical, like, you know, the headdress, the thing that comes out to the sides, the uraeus crown, and like the, you know, the typical kind of King Tut mask headdress where it comes out on the sides. He thinks that is. He thinks the older stuff is typically always just these pointy hat ones, and I don't agree, because some of the gigantic statues, like the one at the Ramesseum, also have that triangular kind of headdress, as do some of the ones at Luxor here, as does the one that Chris Dunn has studied, which I'm not really sure if Yusuf's across that research. But it's interesting. It's an interesting point. I do want to sort of talk to him some more about that at some point. Obviously, we can't get into everything while we're on tour with people because he's usually answering questions the whole time, and so am I. Yeah, it's been busted up. Well, it actually does mean something in terms of the orthodox sets of ages, but I do contend that some of these statues are older, both styles, and that, you know, they've inherited both of the styles from that period. I just love this picture, man. Like the two types of columns. You got the single piece granite column next to the, you know, the stacked rounds of sandstone. Just, it's a great demonstration. Like this granite core of Luxor here. You saw that, if you guys have seen the Luxor video, you know what I'm talking about. And then yeah, we went here in the evening. I'm gonna probably the next trip or two we're gonna go in the daytime, because the problem with the evening is that everybody goes to it in the evening, and it's just full of people. And while it's cool, I just think it'd be better to go without that many people. Yeah, thanks guys. And just thanked them. What's up? Christians, goddamn, turning these things into Christian chapels, churches. I mean, you can see the laser mark on there too. You can see the all of the Christian art, how they plastered over the top of the hieroglyphs and then painted on it. They just plastered over it and painted like they're Coptic Christian all over it. And then you have these very, very much Constantinople style or Ptolemaic era columns. These ones here. Now, in fact, I think I took some pictures of them. You see how wavy they are? Yeah, it's like they're very irregular. And notice, you run your hand over them, they're not smooth or anything. Just good example. Like, all made by pounding. You can literally see how it's done. But this is what happened in the Ptolemaic era, and they were making these out of granite. They're small relative to the big ones and very imprecise. Quick build a church on it. Well, yeah, they do that everywhere, and they're still doing it. I mean, there's literally a mosque on the site of Karnak, of Luxor Temple. What else is out?
I got a shot of you.
This is out, like, so this is they've fully restored this. It's something like 3 kilometers plus. The avenue of sphinxes between the two sites. I'm trying to, like, zoom in the shitty light. And of course you have the competing calls to prayer. Okay. Yep. Our little group. Well, some of them. This isn't our group. These people are in our group. But it's a cool experience going at night. It's nice to do it at least once. Valley of the Kings. Oh, I do want to see this, actually. We're going to skip right to it even. Oh, well, look at these. So we went into some Valley of the Kings. This is probably the burials of Ramses 5 and 6. Just some really weird that they were drawing on the walls. You know, I don't really know what to make of this. That's interesting. The winged serpent with feet. Triple-headed. Okay. I mean, the artwork in here is amazing. Like the Temple of Seti, the actual tomb of Seti the First and everything. Totally worth seeing again. But we go to the Valley of the Kings these days, and I'm pretty much like, yeah, we'll go into the first tomb. I go into the first tomb with everyone. We buy the extra ticket for, like, we go to Ramses 5 and 6 because it's a very cheap ticket, and it's a huge tomb. And we tell people, like, well, because Seti the First is like 1,000 Egyptian pounds. I mean, it's not too bad. It's like $30, right? And it's like I actually rate the tomb. I do rate the Seti the First tomb. And because Yusuf will tell people, like, it's basically, it's not that much better than Ramses 5 and 6, which we give them a ticket for. But if people, and then it's like on your entry ticket, you can go see 3. So I'll have like 12 of the tombs open, random, like not always the same ones. So you get like 3 stamps. You know, they put holes in your ticket. You can see 3 tombs on the entry ticket, and then there's a couple others that are extra tickets. Like Ramses 5'6" is an extra ticket. It's like 150 pounds. Tutankhamun is 300 or 400 or 500 pounds. It's quite an expensive ticket for what it is, and I generally tell people don't bother. Some people do want to see it just because it's famous, but it's the smallest tomb in there. Some of the artwork's okay, but it's this tiny little tomb. Versus like Ramses 5 and 6 is this giant tunnel that branches out and stuff. And then Seti the First is very impressive, and it's the most expensive one. But we go into like 5 and 6, Ramses 5 and 6 straight away. And then we're like, all right, you guys can get tickets, or you want to go see the other ones. We got some helpers that will take them to it. Take them to those places, and then, you want Seti the First, go there, or just explore and go and see a few tombs. And I head straight to the cafeteria. Sit down, get a coffee. I'm like, I'll see you guys here in 2 hours. It was fantastic. Now, this is some of the stuff I wanted to look at that I was interested in this day. For obvious reasons. Because this is how they make the handmade alabaster. And it's essentially the same process that they were using in the old days. Just with steel tools now. And they have these guys sitting in their little sand pit, working on it all day, trying to do shows for tourists, which they're about to put on for us. And you too can go there and play with alabaster, should you wish. And he's just doing the 75.
In the beginning, he looked at the rock and beside what it can be, like a base, additions, obelisk, head process, sometimes bigger and sometimes smaller. This is, for example, the shape of the base, how it look like.
You can if you want, yeah. You don't have to go through that. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I don't want to see the show. I wanted to see the actual thing that they used to hollow out. This thing here. So this is how they would do it. This is as is depicted on the scene on the wall. Same thing, but this is made from steel. They would use a bent stick with weights on it and flint tips, but this is essentially the same technique, just using steel tools now. She just leans hard on it and just like cranks this thing. He just puts his shoulder on top of it, just cranks away at it. So like wedged in there with flint. Yeah, that's funny. He's ready to go. Like takes his shit. Yeah, almost indistinguishable, right? Same thing. So I just wanted to get that footage. I was just interested in that. And then, what are we looking at here? Then yeah, inside the old alabaster store. So I got given a gift of a couple of alabaster pieces while I was there. I am going to buy like a handmade alabaster thing, because most of these things are all machine made. Like most of these are all lathe made. There are the handmade ones as well, which obviously look different to the machine made ones. And I'm kind of interested in a handmade one, just to just to see how. I mean, it depends how much they are, but I'd love to get one and then take it and measure it. You know, put it in the system. But yeah, we take people to these stores. It's cool. I mean, people buy. They're like this. No smoking. Yes, vaping. Okay. This is inside like a real big one. Real big one. Like beautiful piece. Look at this thing. Giant damn vase. But obviously all lathe turned. Ah, and then we went to Mr. Butterwy's house for dinner. This is a family that they help us. Basically the guys that we work with in Luxor and Upper Egypt, and they invite a couple of us around to their house for dinner one of these nights, and they grow this locally. Like this is literally the whole street is all their family, and then they have farms, and all of this is grown locally. The ducks, it's like a duck, stuffed pigeons, the rice. You've got the beans and the other things, and there's like a potato bake, the grape leaves stuffed with rice. It's so good. The food is so good, and it's just the hospitality is really cool, and they just insist on bringing us around and feeding us, so very, very cool. But yes, I very much enjoy going around to Butterwy's house when I'm in Luxor and getting fed like this every time. Right. We did look at Karnak. I felt like we looked at Karnak on the other day. We looked at the saw cuts because we found some extra saw cuts, and we got our footage of the yeah, because we looked at like the sun setting and stuff. We did that, yeah. Komombo, Edfu and Komombo, always cool. So there was some interesting stuff from what Graham had said on his. Let me see what we got on my phone. So Graham had. There's apparently been a new translation of what's happened. I'll find it here at Edfu. So the thing at Edfu is the translation of the Thoth passage that talks about Atlantis. So yeah, that's at Edfu, and we cruise all day. And after we go there in the morning, cruise all day on the ship, which is real nice. Then in the afternoon we go to Komombo, Temple of Horus and Sobek. Just the cool crown, just cool colors. I do like this thing. I always take pictures of this for some reason. It's like you got to squint at it. Like, my eyes are blurry? What the hell? It's just the effect of these glyphs. It's very cool. So you always think like your eyes are out of focus looking at it. It's trippy in person too. The hawk as well. Lotus flowers. Elephant glyph. This is people. Some people think that no, they never had glyphs for elephants. What do we call that? It's pretty sure that's not a boar. That's an elephant with the tusks and the trunk. They definitely knew what elephants were. Yeah, like I said, didn't take a lot of pictures outside of Tombs of the Nobles, Elephantine Island. I am a little bummed about the fact that there's a piece missing. I'll show you the piece that's missing. Let's find it. I feel like it's this one, Elephantine. Yeah, this one. This piece is missing. Piece that Russ is holding right here. This piece, not there anymore. Tried to find it, could not find it. And it's the it's like the obviously the corner of the bullnose, from one of the big boxes that was here. So it is there no more. Russ didn't take it. I'm pretty sure he couldn't get that out in his bag. Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, we turned it over. It's hard if you flip it over. You can't see this side of it. It looks a bit more innocuous, but yeah, it's sad that it's gone. And it's not in the museum there on the site either. We went and asked, and sometimes they pop those things up in the open air museum, and at the museum, and we went and asked, and they're like, nope, nobody knew about it. So yeah, this is hauling. You got to walk up these damn stairs to get to the Tombs of the Nobles in Aswan. It was pretty cool. There's some cool stuff up here. And it's a nice view. Like this is Aswan. Just Aswan's beautiful. This is an interesting piece that's in here. It's a repurposed block. And you can tell it's repurposed because the tops, I mean, obviously the glyphs have been hand carved, but the top surface, so much smoother than the side surface where it's been narrow, it's been like hollowed down here. So this was probably a block that went out to here. And now it's been like shortened and they've carved this top surface on it. Real cool. But it's a nice way to look at like the differences in finishing of different surfaces. You can just touch the side here where it's been like shallowed, and then the end of here much rougher than the top surface. The finishing of the top and the sides and the back. Unfinished statue. You can tell how it was being shaped with chisels. This is inside some of the tombs. Some of them pretty cool. Still some cool artwork and stuff. Old rock cut tombs, Old Kingdom tombs. These aren't like New Kingdom or anything. They're all Old Kingdom. Yeah, little bits and pieces in this outdoor. So we were looking for it in here. Like this is where they collect a bunch of this and put it out. So supposedly you can look at it. Actual sarcophagi. This is in the museum. Little handmade vases and stuff. This is a big bullnose on a piece. Very similar. You start to see this in a lot of places. Like, I wonder where they got that idea from. Again, you can see the reuse of older pieces as foundation layers beneath. Like, Elephantine Island's been like built on top of so many times. So yeah. Quarry the next day at Aswan was that they let us down into the harbour again. This is the second time we've been down here, so I was so happy to get back down here. I didn't have a lot of footage of this the first time, so I was like, yeah, let's go. And Yusuf have been cultivating the relationship there to like let us go down in here. So you can see that I've actually cleaned up the walls a bit to let those dolphins show up a bit better here. You can just see this just monstrous block was yeeted out of here at some point. What is the smoking situation like in Egypt? Technically, it's illegal. You don't really want to travel with it, like on airplanes or anything, but it's, I mean... Well, I don't think they generally let people down here. You see Tito standing down there keeping an eye out. But our group, and again, Yusuf knows I'm really interested in this area. And they've covered up some of the interesting but they dumped a bunch of these wooden things on top of like the notches in the. I think I looked at them briefly there. So it's like you see they've put all over here. There's these notches that go in and out on the end here. that are really interesting, but they've covered it up with all this crap. That's what I was trying to look at, like down. It's down here. In this line. So I don't know why they've done that. It is kind of irritating. But yeah, there's your pre-dynastic. Some people are like, they're flamingos. Like, whatever. Ostriches, flamingos, I don't care. It matches pre-dynastic artwork. And yeah, you can see the curvature of where the scoop marks were. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't understand what these are. Like, it's just like, as if they were carving grooves under it. Maybe this was part of the mechanism that they would use to get something. They had to put something under here to help get them out, or this is like they'd the channels for the balls when they like the diorite balls. They would shove them under here and then they'd cut it off or something. I mean, this is all bedrock at one point. So it seems like a lot of a weird shape to be carving beneath the piece, and maybe there must be some mechanical reason for doing that. And I don't know what it is though.
Oh man. In my opinion, is it the same color of the ostriches, or one came after, or one came before?
Man, this grid work on here is kind of interesting.
So much alike, like the same color.
It's flamingos. Yeah, whatever. Whatever it is, it matches whatever it is. It's either flamingos or ostriches on the pre-dynastic artwork. Same stuff. That's the point. People get all worked up about, you called it ostriches. I don't care. I don't care what it is. I care that it matches pre-dynastic artwork. You know? Yeah, here's more of those like notching things in the ground. It's very strange. This is on the other side where they've yeeted this block out.
Seems like some of those red lines match the scoop marks, like they're hash marks along the way.
Yeah, almost, right? It does kind of look like that. Let's have a look.
I thought they were just staining from, being exposed, but now that you point out
the ridges,
the grid, it seems like those seem to follow the channel.
Great Emu Wars.
yeah, you'll see. We'll definitely get better indications of scoop marks. We see these other depictions here. You got the dolphins over there. Yeah, this is like a fractured part that's come off. But yeah. Oh yeah, there is an obelisk there. Holy shit.
Look at that.
This is all like they cleaned this up or something.
That is cool. There is an obelisk then. It looks like an obelisk.
It's telling me my device is too hot.
Huh. Another one here. You can see it. That's really interesting. Yeah. Two of them. 1, 2. Very interesting. Scoopy scoops. Holes in the ground. What else did I take pictures of here?
If you look at this one here,
Actually, I will not do it here.
if you look at this one here, when it's standing, imagine how can it be down there with the founder?
Above the unfinished obelisk. They still don't let us walk on it, man. I only got to walk on it once or twice. I keep like wanting to. I'm gonna have to make a fuss about that the next time. And go, listen. I need to get on it and walk on it again. And we need to let people do that. It's not gonna hurt anything. You used to be able to. I just get cranky about it now. Just some scoops everywhere, and you can see the unfinished obelisk here. Like it runs down here. You're on the ridge above it, and it just runs all the way up to there. And you can see the quarry over here. Like this is the down here is the harbour area where we were earlier. It's like down in here. So here's the unfinished obelisk here, and then this is like a similar block size that came out of here. I'm convinced of it. And then there was probably another wall in here. There might have even been a couple of these yanked out of here because you've got all this mountaintop here that was probably, up to where I'm standing was probably all granite. you know? Like, this whole area has been removed over time. And this is just where one big piece was pulled out. There might have been other pieces this size actually pulled out of here and here. Like, we don't know. Could be just some gigantic pieces yanked out of here, because you can see the height of it over here, and then this height to the left is also quite high. This whole thing's been dug out. Yeah. And it's all been quarried on top too. All of this stuff's been quarried down from up top. But then this whole big area in the center's been quarried out. And then you've got all this over to here. And up to where I am. This whole thing's gone. Some titans under there still, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's... Yeah, I feel like this whole area's been excavated. This is looking at the scoop marks in the harbour area. All the depounding stones. This is at this is my view from the Temple of Isis on Philae Island, where I spend my time. I pretty much beeline straight for the cafeteria at this place as well. And then what's that? What's that? Oh yeah, we're cruising around in the lower lake, and you can see there's like hieroglyphs on some of the granite around the place. So this area was flooded because of the low dam that the British put in the 1914 thereabouts, I think, early 20th century, and then they had to move Philae Island and a few other things, but it created like this whole area, flooded this whole area. There's a bunch of stuff that went under because of it. We went to Memphis, did the went into the Great Sphinx enclosure again. This was very cool. And then we did the Great Pyramid. I got some nice shots of the Great Pyramid. I'll show you something that I thought was kind of interesting though. Inside the Great Pyramid, I thought that we found some tool marks in there. I thought I might have found some tool marks that I hadn't seen before. So it's in this corner. See, there's like these lines, the striations in the corner here. So this is in the the alcove in between the portcullis area, they call it. It's this corner here. See, it's all been knocked off and knocked down. Yeah. I feel like in this corner there's definitely like saw marks. This is where that big nub is in that portcullis area too.
So you think this stone moved?
See here, it's like it's hard to tell.
Looks like it. Yeah. That's interesting. I never even noticed that. That's a good find right there in that corner.
Goes around the corner, and yeah, you can also tone in here.
Find right there in that corner. If you stand here, come here. Huh? Stand up in here for 1 second. Just stand in here. Okay. Did he say no? Don't do that. No. It just resonates really loud in here. I'm only going to do it for a second though. Oh yeah. Yeah. Dude, yeah, let's not do that. I'm just looking.
It's him whistling at me.
Well, yeah, give it a minute once we get it.
They don't like you resonate. We had a guy in there who was like really getting pissy about us doing that, and then I just did it a couple of times. He's like, "Stop it!" Like, why? What's the problem? And tone, making a noise. So yeah, no, I kind of got some alone time in the Grand Gallery, which was really nice. Pretty rare. And then I think I took a little footage from in here. So yeah, that's the entrance to the relieving chambers, so-called relieving chambers. Right up there. You got to get up there somehow. Let's see. much are Logitech G29s these days? $200. Lowest price in 30 days right now. Where'd I get my pyramid light? I bought it. It's like a mountain biking headlamp. It's a cat eye. It's like if you just find any like mountain biking, like helmet mounted headlamp, it should be super. Like it's like a car headlight. It's perfect. I'm sure there's LED options now that are just as bright, but this thing's pretty bright. So down to the bottom of the Grand Gallery. You know, I was a bit lazy on this trip. I didn't go down to the subterranean chamber. I didn't go to the Queen's Chamber either. I just hung out in the King's Chamber with Yusuf. And we do the little things that we do for people in the King's Chamber that he's got arrangements with dudes to do. Thunderstorm generator. I guess you could always, if you really want to get into it and spend that sort of money, you could always like sell if you bought a G29, you could sell it and upgrade. But if you spent $500 on something you decide you didn't like racing. Full combo's about 500. The Moser DD5, yeah. So this is going down the ascending passageway that goes up into the Grand Gallery, and then you can see it intersects with the descending passageway. With there's the 3 granite plug blocks right at the end. He's staring right at him here, and then this is where the Mamoon's hole connected right to the intersection between these, and then they tunneled around him, which is quite a miracle that they found this spot, you know. They had the 9 or 16. Yeah, so this is a tunnel around to get into the descending passageway that goes down right behind this. Yeah, I know. You're talking about my talking now or my stomping and breathing while I'm in the pyramid? Yes, stomping feet. It's just part of it.
Oh, come on. This is Modera Kabir, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you always want the 3-pedal setup. Clutch is useful. I mean, I like the clutch just for starts. I use the clutch for starts and for recoveries. If I need to spin around real hard, if you need to spin the wheels and turn around quickly. I do clutch the starts.
Hey boss, how are you?
So yeah, we did this from like 9 till 11 p.m. So we're up there late. Late. So, all good though. Yeah. All right. Well, chat. We hit 2 hours. We have. I hope you all enjoyed that video. I'm trying to make these things a bit more of a regular upload to my second channel here, the Uncharted X Live channel. So please do consider subscribing to this channel. That really helps me out. Big thanks to Dub Selector for taking the time to edit these videos. Very much appreciate his help on this. Also, if you want to catch me live over on Twitch, I am streaming 2-3 times a week. I generally announce when I'm going to stream in my Discord. So if you want to join the Discord, take a look below in the comments. There'll be a link to the Discord. And if you like the work that I'm doing, please do consider supporting the channel through the value for value model. There's lots of ways that you can support the work that I'm doing. It's all outlined on my website. It's unchartedx.com/support. We'll catch you in the next one.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Richard. I'm co-director.
Excluding China completely from the story. We can't say we've got the past completely nailed down when we haven't thoroughly investigated the Sahara Desert. Because the Sahara Desert was green during the Ice Age. It wasn't how it looks today. It was a fertile area for many periods during the Ice Age. And oddly enough, there are ancient maps copied from even older source maps which show river channels in the Sahara and lakes. And weirdly, recent surveys have demonstrated that there was a river channel exactly where indicated on that mysterious ancient map. Here's Antarctica as it looks today. Well, this map was drawn in 1813. It's the Pinkerton World Map. And it's based on the latest science available in 1813. It's a really good map where it comes to South America and South Africa and Australia. But as you will observe, something's missing from the picture. Antarctica isn't there. Why isn't Antarctica there? Because it's an honest map. They hadn't discovered it in 1813. They didn't discover it until 1820. So it's very odd, in my view, that Antarctica appears on much older source maps, which themselves are based on even older source maps. It's interesting, this little legend down here, I've had it translated. Behold clearly to you, O reader, Orontius Phineus Delphinatus offers with elegant appearance a geography not so far seen and accurately engraved, which in fact preserves the shape and form of the human heart. And take care that it should be at heart for you. And also presents to your eye provinces, islands, seas, rivers, mountains, not so far seen nor known to some of the great map papers of antiquity, Ptolemy, Eudoxius, Eratosthenes, Macrobius. And we're told that these areas lay in darkness until this map was drawn. I suggest they lay in darkness because they were on the much older source maps that Orontius Phineus and other map makers drew upon, source maps that came out into public circulation from about the 1400s, 1300s onwards, probably taken from Constantinople. And then what about the area of the world that was covered by rising sea levels at the end of the Ice Age? This is another area where very little archaeology has been done. We are talking about 27 million square kilometers. That's roughly equivalent in size to China, the US, and Europe, all added together, that were above water during the Ice Age and that were submerged at the end of the Ice Age. Again, I'll come to those ancient maps. On the left, we have Southeast Asia in 1507, and as it looks today. And on the right, we have an inundation map showing Southeast Asia and Australia as they looked 21,300 years ago when sea level was 400 feet lower than they are today. As you can see, what today is an archipelago of islands and the Malaysian Peninsula was a huge subcontinent-sized landmass. New Guinea was joined to Australia at that time. And it's interesting that this other mysterious map, again drawn from older source maps, seems to depict the Sunda Shelf as it looked during the last Ice Age. So this map is showing present land masses and the sunken land masses that were submerged at the end of the Ice Age. The Sunda Shelf is particularly interesting. We now know that it was highly fertile, highly attractive land during the Ice Age. See, you didn't really want to spend a lot of time in the far northern hemisphere during the Ice Age. You wanted to get down near the equator. That was the best, warmest land on Earth. And this would have been a fantastic place for people to settle and for civilizations to evolve. And that's why I'm so interested, and we depicted it in Ancient Apocalypse, this work by geologist Danny Hillman Natwajaja, at Gunung Padang on the island of Java. And I'm suggesting, and Danny believes, that this site is originated more than 20,000 years ago. It may have been added to by later cultures. It's still venerated today, but it's a very, very old site in his view. It was one of those high areas that was above water, that remained above water even after sea level rose at the end of the Ice Age.
Thanks for being here.
It's on the island of Java. That island of Java was connected to Sumatra and Borneo and the Malaysian Peninsula when the Sunda Shelf was above water. So, Sahara Desert 9 million square kilometers. 27 million square kilometers submerged
Yeah,
at the
baby.
end of the Ice Age, the best real estate on Earth. Is marine archaeology being done? Yes, it is. Marine archaeology is being done. It does exist. It's very expensive, and not a lot of it is done. But when I saw this headline, I thought, I've got somebody on my side. Archaeologist explains why we need to look underwater to understand the past. But then the explanation is so disappointing, because what he's looking for is shipwrecks from the 16 and 1700s. And that's primarily what all marine archaeology is about. It's changing now. It's changing slowly. We know about Doggerland as a result, and archaeologists are beginning to look at it. But my point is that the vast area that was submerged during the end of the Ice Age has never been studied by archaeology at all. And they're not in a position to say that they know that there's no possibility of a lost civilization during the Ice Age, while they haven't investigated those 27 million square kilometers that are now underwater, when they haven't investigated the Sahara Desert. Well, Santa and I decided to do some investigation of our own underwater. And actually, we spent the best part of 10 years scuba diving all over the world, following up tales and traditions from local divers and fishermen, looking for structures underwater. And here at Ponape, the well-known site of Nan Madol, we followed up the advice of local